We helped double one of our construction company clients in under 70 days by addressing these key issues that I'm about to break down. So this is how the process goes. You find a project, you place a bid, you get the job, you front the material costs, and then you get paid upon completion. But there's two things happening here at the same time during the process. First is you stall out and you can't pick up new projects because you're waiting to get paid from the current one. And the second thing is you end up losing the bigger and better deals to your competitors in the marketplace. So now you're stuck with projects that don't necessarily have the best returns, and you're constantly riding this hamster wheel, which is in most often cases a race to the bottom. Now, the reason I know this so well is because we see this every single day with construction company owners and contractors, even real estate investors that come to us having these same problems that I just finished giving you. And the common denominator is they don't have access to enough capital to continue to grow the business fast enough. So I want to give you the 6 most common issues that we see get solved for construction company owners and contractors. And once they're able to piece this together, that's when their revenue just skyrockets. Number 1, stop riding the personal credit roller coaster. You see, the client that we were working with was in a constant frenzy with using their personal credit. They would get a job, need a material, they run to Home Depot, they swipe a card. They go out, they pick up 4 new projects, and guess what? They swipe a card. That's fine. But what ended up happening was they eventually hit a wall. And the wall was the bank did 2 things. One is they noticed that, wait a minute, this isn't a personal expense, this is a business expense. And so they ended up slashing the limits, which was the first issue. And the second issue is the utilization goes into what I call a hamster wheel, which means it's constantly spinning because it's always going up and coming down, going up and coming down, going up and coming down. Now, the biggest problem that happens that I see all the time is that sometimes, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, drop down in the comments if it has, you'll get a project that you fund, ends up taking a little bit longer than you thought, and then guess what? You can't pay off the full balance or close to the full balance on that card, so now your credit drops. And what ends up happening when somebody's credit drops is it sends a signal to the other banks in the area, since the personal credit is going to report across the board, which is an advantage that doesn't happen on the business credit side. When you use a business credit card, it doesn't show on your personal credit, which is another big advantage. But when you use your personal credit and the banks see, okay, wait a minute, why is your utilization 70%, 80%? They must be in dire need of money, even though you're just trying to run your business. Like, you don't physically need the money, you're just trying to run your business, right? So what they do in order to lower their risk is they end up saying, you know what, lower the limits because they may start defaulting on their payments. So now those 2 issues become a bigger issue simply because you were using the right tool for the wrong thing. So the solution for that is still using credit lines, but you want to focus on the business credit lines because it also means that you have access to bigger credit lines that you can use to scale with. Second thing that happened with our client is they started making way more money because they cut out the middleman. Things like hard money loans and MCAs, also known as merchant cash advances, are going to rip through your margins, which is going to slow your ability to scale. Think about it. If, let's say, you have a hard money lender charging you 25, 30% off the 10K before you have to pay your guys, before you have to pay your team, before you have to pay material back, you have to pay someone $3,000, 30% off of your top line. We're already talking about construction is already pretty tight with margins when it's not ran properly. So think of what you could do with that extra 3K staying in your pocket. Really think about that. You'd probably reinvest that money back into get better contracts. You'd probably reinvest that money into maybe getting better equipment, into getting a new business vehicle. But unfortunately, you're having to dish that out because you think that that's the best option out there when it's not. Now, the other thing that I noticed about merchant cash advances and hard money lenders, which is what a lot of clients tell us about, especially in the construction space, they have these crazy payback periods. So it's not just 30%, but they want their money back in 90 days. Or it's not just 30%, but they want their money back in 6 months. And again, I don't know about you, but everything isn't clear cut, meaning just because you get access to a project, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to finish it in the exact timeline that you quote it by. Sometimes, like anything else, building permits are going to slow things up. So if you have something projected for 60 days and it carries into 90 days, but now you have 2 things happening. You have your client who's saying, hey, when's the project gonna get done? And then you also have somebody saying, hey, where's our money? Or we're gonna call the loan the entire amount. That can be extremely stressful. The third thing that happens when you get access to real business credit lines, none of this merchant cash advance stuff, none of this hard money stuff, because we already see how much of a bottleneck that puts into your business, is it allows you to gain access to better projects. This means that you're no longer losing deals to your competitors. Here's something that one of my mentors told me. He said, Irv, the marketplace isn't going to reward the person who needs the job. It's going to reward the person that's ready for the job. Number 4 is having access to more capital that you can use to quickly scale with. Banks like to see that you use their money. So putting big purchases like materials on a personal credit card is not going to serve you in your best interest. Here's why. Remember what I mentioned earlier about banks only wanting to see those type of purchases on business credit cards or business credit lines? If it's on the personal side, that's not going to help out your business score. That's not going to help out your business credit profile. And so what you want to focus on, which is what our client focused on, is once they were able to get access to that first credit line, they put nearly every single expense that they were going to get in that following project on that credit line. Because what ended up happening was this. Once they made that $25,000 charge, which in this case was drywall, was paint, and it was some roofing material, they immediately paid that back versus using cash to try to keep the business going. They now say, you know what? We actually want to get credit for this. We want the bank to see, hey, we're using your money instead of just our own money. The bank immediately raised their credit line the following statement cycle from $25,000 to $65,000. But unfortunately, what most contractors and construction company owners do is the exact opposite. They end up using all the funds that comes in to then fund the next project, but they never really make their way out of that level until they put this piece together. Number 5 is this allows the business owners to get way more organized, which is something that our client also noticed as well. The way that they were previously running their business is they would have a project come in, 20K would get paid out, and then they would use the remaining amount of money to either pay their contractors, to buy material. But the issue was that sometimes they would send out their contractors, like anything else off of a job site, hey, we need an extra can of paint. Hey, we need an extra, let's say, piece of drywall. Hey, we need an extra piece of lumber. We're putting up a fence, whatever. And they would go out and they started noticing, wait a minute, like I would give my contractors, let's say $100, and I don't come back and I don't get all the change, or I don't get the receipts. And so what ends up happening is that you run into an issue on two folds. Number 1 is you don't know where your money's going. And then number 2 is when you go to do your taxes, you don't have the full story laid out that you can tell your accountant, hey, this is exactly what we did. This is exactly what we bought. This is exactly where the money went. What are my deductions? So that way you can pay less in taxes. You can also keep more money at the end of the year when you go to file your taxes, or in this case, at the beginning of the year. So the cool thing about using business credit lines is that you're able to give employees or contractors something known as a virtual card. That means that every single line that they get is specific to them. So let's say you have card 1, card 2, card 3, card 4. Let's say that 3 of those lines are for 3 different contractors where you know they're only going to be making certain purchases. And maybe the 4th card is for things like subscriptions. You now have a more balanced process of where money is going. So now when an accountant goes to ask you, okay, hey, let's take a look at your books. Let's see where you're at. You're just able to pull up your statements right off of your bank account. Now, the 6th and final one, and this is where our clients' revenue doubled, and this is where I see a lot of our clients end up just getting their time back. They're able to breathe a little bit, and that's going to be you're not a one-man show. You're able to go out and actually get help for the business that you're getting and for the market share that you're trying to pick up. Because our client was just flat out working way too much. They were calling the leads, they were giving the estimates, they were doing the work, and then they were rinsing and repeating the process every single day. But when you have access to more capital, because again, you're not dependent off of your first job coming in, paying you out, you're able to get more help, you're able to get better help, and you're able to get faster help. Because we all know that hiring good help doesn't come cheap. But when you hire the right help, you're able to ultimately make more money on the back end. And not only are you able to make more money, but you're also able to remove yourself from certain tasks so that you can do what you do best, which is run the business and not always be in the business. And that's exactly what this client did. He was able to cover 3 subcontractors who were able to do the same job in half the time. This job would have taken him right around 3 weeks to do by himself. He was able to get that job secured, under contract, and done in under 2 days. So not only did he get paid faster to do the same amount of work in less time, but he was also able to lock down 3 new projects along the way because he didn't have all of his capital tied into just one project, which is how most people run it and which is how he was currently running it. So there you have it. Those are 6 key things that I noticed just keeps a construction company owner and a contractor in what I call handcuffs. I don't want you to be one of them, which is why I made this video here. So if you found value in this content, consider sharing this with a colleague or a friend who's in the construction or real estate space that you know is going to be able to find good use of this information and ultimately help them grow their business this year and beyond. Until next time, everyone, I will see you in the next video.